E360 TV proudly presents Messages of Inspirational Stories TV show. Live streaming now to millions of devices around the world on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, YouTube Live, Facebook live streaming. Our shows are available video on demand on these channels. And we broadcast daily, Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on these channels. On Mondays, Expanding Your Business. Tuesdays, Finding Health Naturally. Wednesdays, Mentoring Our Youth. Thursdays, Pets We Love. And on Fridays, Women in Leadership. Brought to you by our producers and hosts, Jim Grant and Donna Guinois. Along with our host, Beata Severin Reed and Emerson Brantley. Supported by our admin team of Michaela Vidal and Gaia Guinois Balconi Weda. And welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. The Messages of Inspirational Stories is proudly brought to you by the good guys at the 6minutewebinar.com. The 6-minute webinar enables you to be able to get your crystal clear message over to your ideal client, because your client's going to come to you looking to you to help them solve one thing. They don't want to hear about everything you have to offer. They just want to know if you can help them with that one thing. And the 6-minute webinar is the tool for that. We're also brought to you by my good friend, Mr. Bill Heinrich, The 7 Levels of Truth. And in this book here, I'm just going to share with you the top of that cover there because it says it better than I ever could. It says this book is for anyone that's seeking answers and solutions and success in life. Your birthright is abundance, love, peace, and joy. And the 7 levels of truth allows you to achieve all of these results in your life. How about that? Also, I'd like to mention my good friend, Mr. Austin J. Haynes. After I had my heart attack and he heard my story, he invited me to have a chapter in this book here. You know, your health turnaround story. I should be able to remember the name of the book since I'm in the book. But my story is the first one, Lessons from the Heart. But today I'm joined with a good friend of ours. He's been with us for several weeks now on Mondays. And that gentleman is Mr. Rennie Gabriel. How you doing, Rennie?
I'm doing wonderful, Jim. And congratulations on getting the first chapter in that book. Because, yeah, from the heart. I remember what you did to your heart.
Well, what my heart did to me, really.
Yeah, I mean, you had it rebuilt. I got it.
Oh, yeah. I mean to tell you. It's really an amazing thing, you know, that what we can do nowadays, because, you know, there's so much we don't understand about the heart. I didn't have any type of medical issues at all, and I had a condition in my heart known as the widowmaker. Men and women can have it. It's hereditary. But there was no test that could actually tell me I had a problem because my blood pressure was good, 120 something over 68, 74. And my bad cholesterol 2 years before my heart attack was at 73. And in the hospital after I had my heart attack, it was 93. And they thought all I needed was stents. I went in for stents and they said, stents won't work for you. You got a 90% blockage in the main artery there. And he says, you got to have open heart surgery. You'll need bypasses. But I'm so grateful for that. And Ray, today we're going to be talking about some things about real estate contracts and I don't know what all. So I'm just going to let you take the lead on this since you are the subject matter expert.
Sure. And, you know, what I've got is I'm highlighting each section of the lease agreement that I've created for our tenants. And it is a contract. It's a contract between me as the owner of the property and the tenant. And we have obligations. The tenant has obligations. And this spells them all out. It is the most important document in property management
Mhm.
because it says what everyone is supposed to do, and we are agreeing to it and
Mhm.
acknowledging it. So that, if a tenant says, well, I don't want to do that, it's like, wait a second, you've already agreed to this. Or the
Mhm.
tenant
Yeah.
says, wait a second, it says here that you were going to pay for the water. Why am I getting the bill? So whatever it is,
Mhm.
it's in that agreement or contract or lease, whatever you want to call it. So we're going
Yeah.
to go through it actually
Yeah.
item by item.
It's
So
kind of like the rules of the game.
oh,
This is what
absolutely.
everybody, this is what everybody is going to participate in, and this is what the landlord's going to do. This is what you're going to do, and it's very spelled out.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And the important thing about it is it protects both parties because both
Hmm.
parties have agreed to it. So that if
Sure
there's ever a
does.
dispute, it's the document that gets relied upon to determine, well, what is it that two parties agreed to.
Hmm.
So if we can't finish it today, because when I go through it and I do it with every tenant, it usually takes us about 30 minutes. If there's a
Hmm.
couple, it takes a little longer because they're going to have some questions.
Hmm.
Hopefully, we can get through the whole thing in this one episode
Hmm.
today. But if not, I'm prepared to come back.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, and I'm
Oh, yeah.
also going to mention very quickly about your nonprofit there, Shelter to
Oh,
Soldier.
thank you.
And I'm just going to remove myself from the screen so they can see your full background there and let you talk just a moment about that, please.
You betcha. Thank you. I appreciate that, Jim. So, anyway, Shelter to Soldier, right here, is an organization that rescues dogs from environments where they would likely die or be euthanized. And instead of them being killed, they are trained, if they have the right temperament and size, as service animals for soldiers who've come back with PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injuries, or other issues. And unfortunately, our soldiers have committed suicide at the rate of almost one an hour, about 20 per day. But not one soldier who's received their service dog has committed suicide. So this charity is saving two lives at a time with every dollar, a dog that would have been euthanized and a soldier that might have committed suicide. So I donate 100% of the profits from the work I do, from the online programs I sell, from my books and things of that nature. Gets donated to various animal and veteran charities, and Shelter to Soldier is one of the primary ones. So thank you, Jim. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. It's my honor for you to be able to share that wonderful charity and the work those good people do. And your website there is wealthonanyincome.com. I think I got it in here somewhere. I'll find it in a minute. But anyway, I'm also going to put your other website up there. As soon as I find it, we got about 25,000 in here, it looks like. But that's a good
Well,
thing.
one of the things that's good is if they go to the wealthonanyincome.com website, there's a
Mhm.
link right at the top of the page to the Shelter to Soldier website. So they
Mhm.
can find out all about that charity if they go to wealthonanyincome.com and click on the link at the top for Shelter to Soldier.
Okay. All right. And while you're talking about the individual slides that we are going to share with you, bullet points, I'll find that and I'll put your wealth on any income uh, marquee up there.
Terrific.
Mhm.
So, what we're going to be sharing today are just the bullet points, other than the very first slide. First slide is going to be detailed, but after that, it's just the bullet points of each of the sections that are in the lease agreement, and I'll talk
Mhm.
about what they cover.
Okay.
So, let's start
You
with
ready?
number one.
There we
Okay.
go.
So this slide, it represents the top half of the lease agreement where everything is summarized all in one place. You don't have to look all over the place to find out who's paying for the utilities or what the name of the tenant is or what their rent is or when it's due or anything about a late charge. All of that is summarized on the very first page in the top of the lease agreement. So
Hmm.
you could use an example, who's providing the appliances, is there parking, do they have pets? Again, all summarized right here. From this point, we're just going to highlight things, but this one I wanted to have in detail. Okay, let's go to slide number 2.
Okay, sir. There we go.
So now the first statement there says, all charges or fees in this agreement are deemed to be additional rent. Now I'll tell you why that's very important. Because let's say you have a late fee if a tenant doesn't pay on time. And let's say the tenant owes 3, 4, 5, 6 months worth of late fees. Well, if you prepare a document that says they need to pay up or move out of the premises, you can include the late fees in that what I'll call eviction document. And the reason you can do that is because in an eviction, you can't collect fees, but I've said that all fees are deemed to be additional rent. You can collect any rent. So therefore, I am saying the fees in the agreement are deemed to be additional rent. And I can also, in the lawsuit, when I'm trying to collect from the tenant, collect the late fees. Number 1, the terms. The tenant agrees to pay in advance, and there's a whole lot of information here. This is where we go into detail regarding that first slide that I showed to you, where all I said is, here's the rent. Well, this goes into more detail. All the rest of this document is the detail that backs up that first slide that Jim showed. Assignment. What that is saying is the tenant does not have permission to rent his apartment to someone else. He can't use it for Airbnb. He is limited to using that apartment for himself or his family, and that's it. He cannot assign it to anyone else. Payment.
So he can't have a friend move in with him and split the rent?
Not without permission. That's absolutely correct. Because how do I know if that friend who moves in is qualified to pay the rent? What kind of credit report would I have on the tenant? What if the original tenant moves out and leaves the friend behind? And I don't even know who it is. No. So yeah, cannot assign it. When it comes to payments, how are they going to pay rent? Check, cash, money order, Zelle, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, whatever. Bottom line is, it has to be in the currency of the country where the property is. So in the United States, it's going to be in dollars. In Switzerland or France, in France, it'll be in francs. In England, it'll now be in pounds. So how is the payment to be collected? Okay, let's go to slide 3. Security deposit. When a tenant moves in, besides them paying the rent, and it's important, I do not collect first month's rent and last month's rent. You will hear that very often where someone says, do you want me to pay you first and last? No, I don't want the last month's rent when they move in, because if they stay for 10 years, that last month's rent might be hundreds of dollars too small. So the security deposit says just that. If they damage the property, what are they leaving so that I can repair the damages? So it's how much will be paid and how they get it back. They need to have everything cleaned. If I need to repaint, what's the time frame before I say the paint has been fully amortized? What about carpet if they damage it? All of that is contained in this section under security deposits. As an example, it says they need to provide a written notice that they're planning to move. If they tell me 2 days before they're planning to move, that means they owe a full month's rent anyway, because it requires a 30-day notice before they move out. Again, covered under the security deposit. They need to have paid all the rent and late fees. They need to not damage the property beyond ordinary wear and tear. It needs to be fully cleaned to my specification, which means the blades in the ceiling fan need to be cleaned, the windows inside and out, the screens, the oven, the tub, the toilet, all of that needs to be cleaned to my satisfaction. And in the 20-something years I've been doing this, there have only been 2 tenants out of hundreds who've been able to clean the apartment so well I didn't need to bring in a cleaning crew. They shouldn't be leaving anything behind. No furniture, no trash, no kitchen utensils. It needs to be completely empty, and they have to return all the keys. I don't know what and amp is, but I think that means all keys and any remote controls. All right, so let's go to slide 4.
Okay, sir. Whoops, here we go.
So what gets deducted from that security deposit? The cleaning expense, because like I said, it's rarely done well enough. Any repairs to the carpet and paint. And here's how I work it. I say a carpet needs to last 5 years. And let's say they're only there for 2.5 years and I have to replace the carpet. Well, 2.5 is half of 5 years. That means they are going to be responsible for half the cost of replacing the carpet.
Wow.
Regarding paint, I give it a 3-year lifespan. So if they're there for 1.5 years, that means when they move out, they need to pay for half of the repainting. I repaint every time a tenant moves out for the new tenant. How are the repairs calculated? That's the formula I just described. Again, the deposit is not the last month's rent. I don't collect the last month's rent, only the deposit. And I'm required to send their refund back to them within 21 days in California. What it is in other states, I don't know, and this is what you have to find out about your local laws. And I think this is a fun one, number 6. They don't get to alter the check. If I'm refunding $600, they don't have permission to change it to $6,000. The whole point is what I send them is all that they're supposed to get, and that's the end of the story. All right, let's go to slide 5.
Okay, sir.
House rules. There are rules that they need to abide by, and we're going to go into a lengthy conversation about the various house rules. But what I'm also saying in number 8 is this is not a security complex. Some people confuse providing a security deposit with this is a security complex. Those may be the same 2 words, but they have nothing to do with one another. I do not have guards around the property. I don't have gates around many of the properties. So they need to understand they are responsible for their own security. And what I have each tenant do is sign and date the lease section by section, acknowledging they understand each of the things that are important, and or I'll have them initially.
And these are just the bullet points because you got to, if you're going to be a landlord, you've got to get all that legal stuff and, make sure that the tenant understands and answer their questions because if you're going to rent a place, it's like any other contract. Once you sign a contract, once you initial a contract, if you did not read it, that's on you.
And at the end of this contract, I say, you are welcome to have your attorney review it. So if they don't feel comfortable about it, they can have their own attorney review it. And while we're here, my office happens to be in the front room of the house, and I see a couple people walking up to my door. I have no idea what they want, but I am not going to let them interrupt me. But if you hear the doorbell, that's what it's about.
I hear you.
So let's go to slide 6 now.
Okay, sir.
Now, I want the tenants to pay their rent on time. And my tenants do pay their rent on time. Why? Because I enforce the late charge. If they don't pay the rent on time, which is by 5 o'clock on the 3rd day after it's due, and I have all my tenants paying rent on the 1st, so by 5 p.m. on the 3rd of the month, all rent needs to have been paid. And if it's not, then they have to pay a 5% late fee. They're knocking at the door. Jim, can you pause this or are we live?
Yeah, I sure can. I'll tell you what, let me just pull this back and I'll let you go and take care of
Okay.
that. And let's see here.
I'll
Got to
probably
move
be
up. Here
two
we
minutes
go.
and I'll.
Okay. Just let me know when you're back. And ladies and gentlemen, Wealth on Any Income, if you go there, he's got a lot of great information there. And also, too, when he comes back, you're going to see there on the ticker, on the marquee, Kyla Thompson. This is a young lady that Rennie is helping, and I'm going to let him expand more on that. So I'm just going to let the marquee run. But I'd like to say that we're very honored to have Rennie here. His life story. When he was 50 years of age, Rennie and I are the same age. We're both 74. But when he was 50 years of age, Rennie was broke. He was so broke that he was out picking up aluminum cans, bottles, finding anything he could for recycling so he could sell it. And that way was one of the ways he was buying food for his family. But now he turned his life around and he's worked very hard at it. And Rennie's a person that really enjoys giving and helping other people. So what I'd like to say, if I may, when you get a chance, also visit Rennie at his website there, Wealth on Any Income, and he'll be more than glad to help you and talk to you and just whatever he can do there.
That Jim, I gotta describe that interruption. It is so cute.
Okay.
And I saw that on the little banner across the bottom, it talked about the GoFundMe for a girl named Kyla. Kyla and her daughter, who my wife and I have taken under our wing. One of our neighbors was going to, how do I say, they called the city bulky item pickup to take away a dining room table and 5 chairs. And it is a large and heavy set. And I thought, oh, they're just gonna have this go to the trash. And Kyla could use this set. And then my wife said, oh my gosh, her place isn't going to be big enough for this furniture. Why don't you just sell it and donate the money and she can buy her own set? Well, it turns out the person who delivers my Los Angeles Times newspaper knew about the set, saw it in the driveway, and wanted to know if she could have it. So I've just donated it to the gal who delivers my Los Angeles Times newspaper.
That is really something. I had my mic muted there for a second. But yeah, and Kyla, that is her GoFundMe link right there. And I think we had it one time there. I'm not sure. Let me see if I've still got it in there. I don't know if I've got it in here or not. No, I
Well,
can only have 10 slides in here, but I've got a slide for 2 that we normally put up there. But with all the other slides, there's only so much room we have here in the studio.
I
But
get it. But I see
yeah.
that running across, and someone could
Oh,
always stop the broadcast and copy it
oh
down.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because and because she's working very, very hard. She's driving a bus, isn't she?
Yeah, I don't think she's finished her training to drive a
Hmm.
city bus, but
Hmm.
she's passed all the exams, including driving the bus, which I didn't realize how complicated it was. It's not like you just turn on the key and you steer the puppy. You got to know about the air pressure and check the engine and the fluid levels. And I mean, it's like flying an airplane before you can drive the bus.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
So,
because it's a public vehicle there, and you got a lot of
yeah.
people there. I've also put the sheltertosoldier.org up there. I'm going to be switching these things out. And I think we had got the number 5 on the slide, I think.
Good question.
Uh,
That sounds possible. Let's take a
yeah.
look.
Okay. This was 5. And
Yes. So the next one would
and
be 6.
How about that?
And
We
yeah,
we covered, didn't we? We were getting
well,
into it.
we started. We didn't finish
Hmm.
because that's when the doorbell rang.
Hmm.
Um, so tenant needs to pay on time, or I do enforce the late fee. Now, if a check bounces, which is item number 7, what that means is, yes, their rent is late, and they now have to pay any charges for a bounced check plus the late fee, because by the time the check bounces, it will be late. Number 8, who pays for what in terms of utilities? Does the tenant pay for the water, or do I pay for the water? There's the gas, there's the electric, there's the internet, there may be, well, there's electricity. This determines who is going to pay for what. And
Hmm.
depending on the building, will determine whether we're paying for some of these things or the tenant is paying for some or all of these things. Number 9, parking. Are we providing assigned parking? If so, what is the assigned parking designation? As well as, tenants are not allowed to have cars that are non-operational stored on the property. They're not to do any repairs, changing the oil of any cars on the property. That's not the kind of apartment buildings that we have. If their car breaks
Hmm.
down, it needs to be towed away and fixed by a proper mechanic. Okay, let's go
Hmm.
to slide 7.
Slide number 7. Here we go. Boom.
Okay, storage areas. In some buildings, we provide storage for the tenant, in others, we don't. Bottom line is, we assume no responsibility for
Hmm.
any of the items a tenant has in storage. Overnight guests, number 11. We allow them to have people stay with them. That's not a problem.
Hmm.
Someone can stay with them
Sure.
several nights. They could stay a week. You know, their mother is visiting, their brother is visiting, a sister is
Hmm.
visiting, a nephew and niece is visiting. Not a problem to have overnight guests up to 1 week. We also want to be notified if people are staying with them, because some tenant may say, I saw this strange person go into my neighbor's apartment. It's
Hmm.
good if I know something about that. And
Hmm.
finally, if someone is staying for a long period of time where it appears they have moved in and they are a new subtenant, we will want to have information on that person, and the rent will be increased
Hmm.
because our utilities will end up being increased with that
Hmm.
person there, even if we're only paying for the water.
Hmm.
So that's covered under overnight guests.
Hmm.
12, pets. Do they have pets? What kind of pets do they have? Is it a dog? Is it a cat? Is it a goldfish? If it's a fish, how large is the tank? Do they have insurance for the health reasons of their pet? Are the pets been vaccinated, spayed? All of these
Hmm.
things have to be covered when it comes to the pets. Now, some places
Hmm.
don't allow
I just
pets.
I just gonna say that's very important because if someone has pets there like a dog, and if the dog's not up to date on its shots, and it bites a neighbor kid or something, it could create a lot of problems.
Exactly. And under pets, we also have the requirement that they have renter's insurance of at least $300,000, that in
Hmm.
addition to covering them and their pet, names us as an additional insured.
Yeah, that's a
So
tremendous advantage because if they'll be paying for the actual policy, and you will also be insured, be additionally insured on that policy without any money out of your pocket, and that's smart.
exactly. And it's so important because, let's say, like you said, a tenant's dog bites someone, that
Hmm.
person may want to sue the tenant, but their attorney's going to say, forget about the tenant. Tenant doesn't probably have much money. Sue the
Hmm.
landlord. That's the
Hmm.
person with the deep pockets.
Hmm.
And so that's why we require insurance for anyone's pets. And we also want to know, we have a separate pet agreement that covers all these things just besides the short paragraph in the lease agreement.
Oh
Because
yeah.
let's say a tenant gets in an auto accident and their dog is left in the apartment, who's going to feed the dog? Who's going to take care of the dog? What about walking the dog? The tenant may be in the hospital from an auto accident. I need to know, who do I reach in the event of an emergency who will take care of their pet.
Hmm.
So there's a
That's a good
lot of
point
things.
because, oh, yeah, that's a very good point that you make there because the pet can really mess up a place in a hurry, especially when they get bored. That's when they get destructive.
Yeah.
And
And so you got to be prepared for the emergencies. So, and by the way, I found that all of our tenants who have pets take
mhm.
care of these pets as though they were children.
Oh, yeah.
And we
Oh,
don't
yeah.
even charge an additional security deposit for pets.
Hmm.
So I love having pets. It's like I get more dogs to play with without having to take care of them.
That's pretty neat too. Yeah. And
Yeah.
because pets are a wonderful, I love dogs. They're just a wonderful thing because I've said many, many, many times here on the TV show that can you imagine what this old world would be if everyone had the loving heart of the family dog? Wouldn't it be a great world?
It would be
Really would be.
absolutely right. That's it. My wife has a funny little postcard that says, "People I like. One, dogs." That's it. That's the whole list.
There you go. Well, that's
Uh,
a lot of names on that list, though.
yep. Well, now 13 water. I have a feeling I may have dropped a word off there. I think that would have been water filled furniture, which you could tell was a
Okay.
throwback from 50 years ago when people had water
Yeah.
beds.
Waterbed. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
used to have a waterbed. Did you ever have a waterbed?
No, never had one, but we had friends who did.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they're around anymore, but this is still in
I
our
don't know.
lease.
I think they still are. I'm not sure. I mean, I remember one thing neat about those things in wintertime, you get in a nice warm bed.
Heat the water.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, 14, condition of premises. Here's
Mhm.
where the tenant is saying they've examined the premises and everything is in working order. Now, the reality is,
Mhm.
I could have missed something. There may be a light switch that's not working, or it turns out the garbage disposal was jammed.
Mhm.
So I also, at this point, give the tenant a list of things to check, and they're responsible for checking it and then getting that list back to me if there's any corrective action I need to take.
Is there any time limit on that checklist? Is like 3 days or anything, or
I
a
like to
week,
have it
or
back within 30 days.
within 30 days? Yeah. If they don't know, if
Yes.
they don't know it's not working in 30 days, they're not really, living in
They're
the
not
house
paying
there.
attention. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Hmm.
Um, Maintenance and alterations. Well, what this is saying is the tenant does not get to change things in the apartment. They don't get to repaint. They don't get to put up wallpaper. They should not be changing the light fixtures
Hmm.
without permission. And when it comes to maintenance, they need to reach out to me if something needs to be repaired, whether it's a
Hmm.
garbage disposal or a light switch or an outlet or the oven, the stove, the fridge, the air conditioner. They need to reach out to me for any repairs. Now, in 16, it says landlord's right of entry. Now, this covers two
Yeah, I
things.
want to hear about that one.
The tenant needs to be provided 24 hours before I come into the apartment for an inspection or a repair or anything else. Now,
Hmm.
obviously, if they've told me I need to repair something and I say, well, I could be there in 3 hours, they're giving me the permission. If they say, oh, that would be great, yes, please come on over.
Hmm.
Uh, so it takes care of repairs as one item. But the next thing, which is terrific, is that when I advertise an apartment for rent because the tenant has given their 30-day notice that they're planning to
Hmm.
move, during that 30 days before they leave, this is giving me permission to show their apartment to prospective new renters.
Mm.
And 90% of the time, when I'm showing an apartment, it's with the current tenant still living there. and a new lease is signed before that tenant even moves out. I don't have
Hmm.
vacant apartments. We run
Hmm.
year in and year out at 100% occupancy because
Hmm.
of this provision number 16, which allows me to show the apartment before the tenant moves out.
That's very important. And another thing too is that the way you maintain your property, you paint it every 3 years. The carpet's no longer in 5 years. It's always cleaned. And I mean, just think about if you're going to walk into a place to rent, and we've all seen all kind of rentals and things like that, and it looks like the landlord doesn't care. And if the landlord doesn't care, chances are that negative energy in there is going to rub off on the tenant. But when you walk into a place, it's freshly painted, the carpet's clean, everything's nice, it has that tendency to tell you, this is where I want to live.
Exactly.
It
They're
really
seeing,
does.
yep, they're seeing how the tenant lives. And oftentimes the prospective tenant will ask the current tenant, well, can you tell me what the utilities are? And do things get repaired quickly? And the tenant is able to endorse living in that property because they're able to say, yes, when we have the need for something to be repaired or a drain to be cleared out, it's taken care of. And
Hmm.
so I don't even, I mean, I actually find it's helpful to have the tenant there,
Hmm.
but they don't have to be. So, uh, let's see, landlord's right of entry. Okay, and the last item, significant maintenance. What this is saying is that if I have to fumigate the building and the tenants aren't able to stay in their apartment for 2 to 3 days or something like that, they do not owe rent for the period of time they are not in the apartment. It doesn't
Hmm.
say I have to pay to put them up in a hotel. It just says they don't owe rent while if they're not able to occupy the apartment.
Hmm.
Okay, let's move on to slide 8.
All right.
Okay, 8. This covers a whole bunch of things that have to do with the tenant's behavior. As an example, 18 says noise. Guess what? Not tolerated. And it's covered more detail in section 20 below, where I'm talking about rules. 19, repairs by the landlord. This is
Hmm.
saying if something needs a repair, they're supposed to reach out to me or, someone we designate. So under 20, it starts with the rules, and there are about 5 or 6 sections to this. So
Hmm.
the rules include, but they're not limited to the following items. There are general rules like turn off the appliances when you leave, lock the doors when you leave. Now, you may say, Rennie, these things are common sense. Guess what? Common sense isn't common knowledge.
There you go.
So, I'm not going to take any chances and I'm going to describe all the things the tenant is responsible for.
Hmm.
Item number 1 talks about the tenant is responsible for the conduct of their guests. It's
Hmm.
not just the tenant is obliged to conform to the lease, but their guests are also required to conform. Their
Hmm.
guests can't smoke in the apartment, just like the tenant can't smoke in the apartment. The
Absolutely.
guest needs to be quiet, just like the tenant needs to be quiet.
Hmm.
Item number 2, noise and conduct. That's an example of what I was just describing. Number
Hmm.
3, cleanliness, trash, mildew, mold, ventilation. Bottom line is the tenant is responsible for keeping the apartment clean, not to accumulate cat trash, but dispose of it in the proper receptacles. Now, there's been a lot of issues regarding mold and mildew where people say, "Oh, I I can't breathe. There's toxic black mold in my apartment." Well, guess what? None of those things happen if there's proper ventilation. So I give the tenant a book on how to ventilate the apartment, like have windows open when they take a shower and things of that. I mean, simple things.
Hmm.
And there's difference between mold and mildew. And this pamphlet describes those things. Now, safety. This gets back to having the doors locked, not smoking in the apartment, turning off the oven or the range if they're not there, things of that nature. Oh, and I even see that I wrote down smoking is prohibited. All of
Hmm.
our properties are smoke free.
Hmm.
Tenants do not get to smoke in their apartment or on the grounds anywhere around the property.
Not even outside the premise. I mean,
No,
they
not
can't go
even
out.
in the courtyard, because I've had tenants complain of a tenant smoking on the sidewalk in front of their apartment. That smoke is going into their apartment. I'll get a phone
Hmm.
call from the tenant. So if they want to smoke, they need to actually cross the street and smoke.
Or sit and smoke in their car or something, huh?
Yeah, or sit and smoke in there. Well, as long as the car's not on the premises. If it's on the
Yeah.
street, they can have it. They can have at it.
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you.
All right. So then section number 5 talks about maintenance, repairs, and alteration. Again, they're responsible to let me know if things need to be repaired. They don't get to alter any equipment in their apartment or on the
Hmm.
property. And one of the items here is that the apartment is supplied with a smoke detection device, and
Hmm.
they are responsible for checking to make sure it always works. And if
Hmm.
it doesn't, they need to let me know. I'll replace the battery. Yeah, there's also a carbon monoxide unit in every apartment. Again, they need to let me know if those things aren't working. They have 10-year batteries,
Absolutely.
but the point is, you know, they could go bad after 9 years, and
Hmm.
I need to know, and I can replace it.
Hmm.
All right, looks like we're going to get
Absolutely.
through everything, Jim. Let's go to slide number 9.
Okay.
And what
Ooh.
this part of the lease covers is what happens if the property is destroyed. I'm in California.
Mm.
We have earthquakes here. Other parts of the
Hmm.
country have earthquakes also, or they have tornadoes. My gosh,
Oh
right
yeah.
now, I mean, there are tornadoes just doing untold damage and taking the
Mm.
lives of people
Oh
in
yeah.
our heartland. And if the property is destroyed, guess what? The lease becomes void. Because
Hmm.
it's not, no property, well, then no lease.
Hmm.
22, insurance. I mentioned this regarding the pets, and
Hmm.
it states here that we are not responsible for the property of the tenant, and they
Hmm.
are required to have insurance that covers their personal belongings, and especially if they have a tenant.
Yeah, because renter's insurance is really a good thing. It protects your property. It also comes with liability, and it also, just like a regular homeowner's insurance, if you have property in your vehicle and you're going across country and your vehicle gets broken into it, and your property gets stolen out of your property, out of your vehicle, you got insurance there.
Yes, and
You
it's so
really do.
inexpensive. We're talking
Mhm.
it's about 30 cents a day
Yeah,
to have
yeah,
renter's insurance.
mhm.
So
Really is.
it's not expensive.
Mm-mm.
Um, Next item, change of terms. This is pretty much saying this lease is good for whatever the term is we selected, 6 months,
Mhm.
a year, whatever it is. And I'm not allowed to change any terms of this lease without a 30-day notice after the term expires.
Mhm.
So I can't halfway through the lease say, we're increasing your rent, or you're no
Yeah.
longer being provided parking. I can't
Mhm.
do that. So that's a tenant protection.
Mm.
24, termination.
Mm.
The way I have our leases phrased is that at the end of the lease period, it automatically goes month to month. And the reason for it is we used to have apartments that were covered under rent control, and I was not about to sign a year lease for, and lock a tenant in for another year. If they wanted to move in the 13th or 14th month, terrific. I can now bring the rent up to market levels.
Mhm.
And so after the first year, all of our leases go month to month.
Mhm.
25, early termination fee. There are situations where a tenant does have to move before the lease has expired. Maybe they got a job somewhere else. Maybe they lost their job, whatever it is. What I'm saying is they can terminate the lease early, but they have to pay a fee, and it's half of a month's rent. And that would come from their security deposit, or they can just pay it, either way. Abandonment. I've actually had a couple of tenants who moved away and left everything in their apartment.
Wow.
Well, I mean, as strange as it seems, it's happened twice. And there's a certain process we have to go through if a tenant has abandoned their property, where we have to put their stuff in storage, we have to post a notice, we can't do anything with it for at least 30 days, and so on and so forth. So the abandonment covers what are our responsibilities if they just up and leave and don't even tell us.
Because all of these terms here, it protects the tenant and the landlord, but it's also runs right in step or parallel with the state of, in your case, state of California state law.
Correct. And that's
really
important
does.
for anyone, because I can provide them a sample lease that we use, but they have to find out what provisions fit or don't fit in their particular area. And it could be city to city, it could be state to state.
Could be county to county, whatever, yeah.
Exactly.
Sure can be.
Waiver. What that is saying is that if we don't enforce some provision of the lease, it does not mean we have waived that provision. Number 28, validity and severability. What that means is, let's say item number 24 in our lease, a termination, is found to be invalid by some judge in a court. Well, what that means is only that provision is invalid and not our entire lease. So each item is handled separately in the event something is deemed to be not valid. Number 29, attorney's fees. Let's say a tenant sues us for something. Our lease says they can collect up to $500, and vice versa. If we sue them, other than rent, we can't collect more than $500. So that's the point of having an attorney fee in there. It says what our limitations are. All right, let's go to slide 10.
Okay, number 10. There we go.
And this turns out to be our last slide. So number 30 says the application that all the statements in the tenant's application to apply for the apartment are deemed to be truthful. If not, there is a reason for us to void the lease and request that they move. Number 31, lead warning statement. Now, I don't know that there's any lead paint on any of our properties, but I also give the tenant a booklet on how to protect themselves from lead paint. And this is a little bit on the humorous side. This booklet talks about all the ways they can protect themselves from lead paint poisoning, such as not to chew on the woodwork, not to eat any paint chips. But here's something, Jim, I bet you're not aware of. They are also told not to eat any dirt around the building. Why? Because maybe there's lead dust in the dirt. This is the detail to which these government booklets go into. Don't eat the paint chips, don't eat the dirt. This is what, this is what we explain to our tenants.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to those booklets and information like that, a lot of that's available from the state or the county or the city, right?
Well, I get our booklets from the federal government. They cost us $1 each, and I give them to each tenant and have them sign and date that they've received the lead paint booklet, how to protect themselves and their family. So
yeah, that's wise because Yeah, that's very wise because if you're thinking about getting into owning an apartment building, you want to make sure that you protect yourself. And because really what a contract does, it protects both parties. And it's the best way to actually protect both parties. It really is. Because I remember back in the 70s, I was renting a place. No, it was back in the late 60s, right before I went in the army. And it was just word, just a handshake. Okay, and guy was a real nice guy. Of course, I wasn't a problem for him, or anything like that. But anyway, he was just kind of like, easygoing and all that. But see, stuff like that, a handshake, and yeah, sure, and being loosey goosey about stuff. If you got any loose areas there, that's where you're going to wind up in a sinkhole. You're going to wind up in a problem. And that's why all of this documentation is important to be in accordance with the state and local laws to protect both parties, the tenant and the landlord. So make sure you don't cut any corners.
Absolutely right. Now, number 32 is a recent addition, in the last, I don't know, 10, 12 years.
Mhm.
It says that if they want to know what perverts are living in the area, they can
Ooh.
go online because this is the Megan's Law disclosure.
Mhm. Mhm.
They can find out what sex offenders or perverts are living near them.
Mhm.
Number 33, multiple occupancy. What this is saying is if a tenant is living there by themselves, they're fully responsible for the rent. But if there's two or more people who have signed the lease, they are both fully responsible for the
Mhm.
rent if one or the other moves out.
Mm.
So it's
Let's
not like,
talk about that for a moment because my granddaughter is going to school over at Texas A&M, and her and two other girls, they've been together for all this time, and they all have a little home over there. They've been renting for years, and I haven't really talked to her about it or asked any questions about it because it's really none of my business. But let's say that three college kids come in, and they want to rent a two-bedroom apartment, and how does that just share with us how that would iron out and everything. Let's say
well,
two guys are going to college. They will live together, and they want a two-bedroom apartment. So I'll let you take it from there.
okay, real simple. So let's say both of them sign the lease because that would be required because I'm going
Hmm.
to have two adults there. If each one wants to send me their payment separately, that's okay. I'll accept that. So each one pays half the rent.
Hmm.
But if one of them moves out, the remaining person is now responsible for 100% of the rent, not half the rent, just because they were paying half the rent before. So in your
Hmm.
granddaughter's case, if the three kids are on the lease and one of those three move out, the remaining two are responsible for the whole rent, whether they do it 50-50 or one third, two thirds,
Yeah.
that's up to them. But the
Hmm.
landlord is still going to get 100% of the rent, even though one of those three girls moved out.
Hmm. And that's very important to know because a lot of people think, well, if I move in a place with two other people, I pay a third of the rent. And if one of them goes, I still pay a third. And that's not the case. And it
Exactly.
also give you incentive to, try and get along with each other too.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, number 34, attachments. What that
Hmm.
is saying is there are items in addition to the lease agreement that are
Hmm.
also a part of the lease. That could be
Hmm.
the pet agreement, that could be a
Yeah.
bed bug agreement, things of that nature. And that's also a part of the whole lease.
We got about 2 minutes left. We'll have to speed it up here.
Okay,
Yeah.
unlock fee. If a tenant locks himself out, I will let them back in, but they have to pay for it. It's not free.
Mhm.
If there are any additions or exceptions to the lease, they're filled out here. The entire agreement, number 37, is what they're agreeing to. And the last item, number 38, says they are getting a copy of this agreement and they sign and date it. And the last item, if you desire, consult with an attorney before entering into this agreement.
Hmm.
We finished, Jim. We got through the whole
Yeah,
thing
how
in 1
about that?
episode.
Yeah, I look, we've had plenty of time, so I kept talking, you kept talking, and but we really fitted that in, and I'm just really glad we had this series, and I want to invite you back again real soon to be able to share some things in the business world, and we're looking for mentoring for you, mentoring our youth. You may know someone there, but Rennie, this has just been a tremendous show for us. It really has. And I want to personally thank you so much for, being a great co-host with me on this thing. That's what you did. Yeah, he's my host. I'm his host. So together we just kind of co-host along. Well, Rennie,
You just,
thank you so much. And we're going to get you back on here. We'll talk and see if we can get you back on here in the next week or two or whatever your schedule's like. We'll iron out some things because Rennie and I, we go back a ways, and there's a lot. We have a lot of common ground, and plus the fact you figure 74 and 74, that's 158 years there, ain't it? 148
uh,
years.
if you say so.
Yeah, 148 years of experience,
Yeah, you're right. I think 100,
and we're gonna give you both barrels on it too.
148 years. Yeah, 140, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, our time is gone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure and share this wonderful information on all of the shows. If you want to go to our YouTube channel, messages of inspirational stories, or just remember to go to mytvshow.live. All of our shows there are listed on their website, and we'll be glad that you can just click on them and share them with others. And thank you so much. Appreciate you, Rennie. Rennie, thank you very, 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 very much.
You're welcome. And if anyone wants the whole lease with all the verbiage we left out, they
Mhm.
can send an email and I'll provide it to them.
Amen. Just get in touch with there at Wealth on Any Income, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, our time is gone. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.